Resident Evil.
Last time we looked into the original Resident Evil. I recommend checking out that video if you haven't, because there are some details I won't go over with this video, since we are covering a remake and I'll just be rehashing what I've already said. With this video we will go into what gameplay improvements Resident Evil Remake has made and additions, as well as what this game brought to the overall canon story of Resident Evil. Remake left such a mark that it ended up taking over the spot of the original. This game is a true survival horror experience. It doesn't get any better than this game in terms of how a survival horror game should be. Before we dive in, let's go over development. Shinji Mikami jumped back into the director chair to develop this remake, which is a somewhat rare thing to see happen. Most of the time remakes are developed by a whole new team by the time they start development, which is what happened with the other Resident Evil remakes, besides having some developers still within the company. Because Mikami was seeing over the remake, he was able to really have a good overall idea of what could be improved and how to keep it all faithful, as well as do the things that weren't possible originally on the PlayStation 1. The remake would be developed for the GameCube exclusively at the time. The console was still early at the time and the team had to really play around with the hardware to work out what they could do. For the remake they would go with the 3D models on top of pre-rendered backgrounds like the original games. But of course with new hardware they were able to add a lot of details into the backgrounds and especially the 3D models. The camera is more dynamic and can track the player at varying angles. The backgrounds also make use of practical effects and full motion video layers to simulate effects such as rushing water or swaying tree branches. Creating fear in players was a priority, and many of the game's backgrounds were designed to have a high contrast between dark and light so that enemies could appear unexpectedly. The script was redone, which of course meant the game would get new voice acting done too, which is done in a more serious way. Though there is still some campiness with it, it is Resident Evil after all. They would also use face and motion capture, giving us what I think is to be the best version of Jill, through Julia Roth. Now let's get into the story of Remake.
Damn it! Make for that mansion!
Resident Evil.
The story of Remake overall follows the same beats of the original, but there is a lot more details and new additions to the story. Remake did such a fantastic job being faithful to the original and adding new things that doesn't mess with any of the lore, that the game is now to be considered canon over the original. So much so that Capcom will only reference the remake now, putting the lore in future games after the remake. Before we get into the story of Remake, what happens before? After the events of Zero, Rebecca heads into the mansion to see if she can find any of Bravo team. She can't find anyone and takes a nap from pure exhaustion, kicking off the events of Nightmare 1 and 2 from Umbrella Chronicles. In this we will see Richard bump into Rebecca, and they'll make their way through the mansion. They end up running into Yawn, which ends up attacking Richard badly, and the sequences end where Chris will find them in the main Remake campaign. Speaking of, in Remake, Stars is sent out to check on Bravo team. Bravo team was investigating murders in the Arklay Mountains and haven't checked in. The original RE had a real cheesy live action opening, but this time it's done in-engine and they are going for a more dark tone, which is fantastic. I think this opening cinematic is really good and definitely sets the tone for the type of game you'll be getting into. It's creepy and overall the style is really cool. I really like touches like seeing from the perspective of the body cam, or the shot of Jill shocked from what she is seeing after emptying her clip. It's all crafted perfectly. The team gets attacked by infected dogs and after Brad flies off leaving the team, they are forced to run into the mansion. Depending on what character you pick out of either Chris or Jill, the story will play out a little differently like in the original. Though overall the story beats are the same in either campaign, so you don't have to play both, even though I'd recommend it just to see the different character interactions. In Chris's campaign, the intent is to rescue Jill and escape the mansion, and in Jill's, it's to rescue Chris and escape. Though you don't have to do that. There is multiple endings depending on your choices throughout the campaign. Everyone escaping is the canon of course though. Chris will have Rebecca pop up throughout. You'll bump into her and Richard where we left them in the Nightmare story beat. You'll have to go find an antidote for him. Once you do, Rebecca will stay with him, giving him aid, and even Rebecca can patch you up a bit while she is in the safe room. Just like the original, Rebecca is playable at points and she will help you out throughout, like playing the piano and helping with Plant 42. I really like Rebecca in this game. I thought she was a little annoying in the original, but the way she is in this game is a lot more endearing. Even more so than in Zero, I think. Though she still doesn't have the toughness or skills you would expect after what she went through in Zero. Which is very weird since both games were made around the same time. We see Rebecca being cornered and scared by a hunter, even though she literally just took on a queen leech within canon. But this is a remake of the original at the end of the day, so it's best not to look into it too much. But yeah, overall Rebecca is cool in this, and it's the personality you would expect with future entries. She's more serious and knows what she is doing, not so lost like in Zero or the original at times. Barry will accompany Jill in her campaign, and like the original, he will assist you throughout. Like in the original as well, Jill's campaign is used as an easy mode. You'll be able to access doors quicker, gain better weapons easier and quicker, have more inventory spots, and Barry will assist you a bunch of times too, like with Plant 42. Barry is a lot more grounded in this remake. He doesn't have a lot of the charming lines, and he's overall a lot more serious and depressing. Honestly, I do like the original Barry a lot more. Yeah, the remake Barry is a lot more fitted for this game and even the universe, but the original Barry is just too charming and entertaining for me. Remake Barry is still cool though and has a lot of classic lines reworked. They've taken away a lot of the choices you can make in the original, which is a shame, like when you go down the rope after the yawn fight, or sections where you'll decide whether Barry or Rebecca follows you or stays back. Having a lot of stuff like that in the original made it have a lot more replay value, but the remake is a lot more streamlined. What really makes this remake stand out though with the story is what they've added to the lore and how well everything is tied to later games within canon. Besides notes, references and so on for future games like RE2 and 3, which are all fantastic, a incredible great new addition, Lisa Trevor would be the massive add-on to the lore of RE. She is a test subject infected with a mutant form of the progenitor virus that became the foundation of the T-virus. She is a rare individual who has been imprisoned for about 30 years since the beginning of the T-virus project, and has survived whilst being subject to human experimentation. As a result of long-term exposure to multiple experimental viruses, she developed characteristics said to be almost immortal, and she was the chrysalis for the discovery of the G virus that will play a big part in RE2 and 3. Her Story 3 remake is pretty tragic. You'd first get a nod to her in the main hall if you were to examine the gates behind the stairs, and then you will go through her backwoods cabin. Once you grab the crank, you'll hear the cabin door open, and if you are quick enough, you can catch Lisa walking in. Great tension, but it's ruined when you get a funny as knockout scene. The whole part of you getting knocked out by Lisa only to wake up and have her chase you is so weird. Lisa was notable for her bizarre behaviour of tearing off and wearing human skin, and was supposed to be disposed of after the virus samples were extracted, but instead she is still alive and wanders around the mansion wearing restraints. You'll bump into her a bunch throughout. As you go through the campaign, you'll pick up notes from the Trevor family. George Trevor was the one who built the mansion as well as many other projects for Spencer, but because he knows a lot of the secrets, Spencer had him taken care of as well as his family captured and experimented on. Pretty horrible stuff. You read as Trevor fears for his family, as well as the mum Jessica planning to escape with Lisa. Trevor and Jessica don't make it, but Lisa, as mentioned, survives experiments and regenerates most injuries. Lisa is trying to find her mother. When trapped, people would go in to see her, making themselves out to be her family. She would catch on and take her mother's face back to pass on to her actual mother when she sees her again. Later on, you'll face Lisa again with either Barry or Wesker, and can tip stones over that will reveal Lisa's mother's grave, making her freak out and jump off the cliff. Hearing her scream "Mum" and jump is pretty saddening. You really feel for her reading all the notes and even seeing her room straight after that fight. Now, like in the original, you'll progress through the mansion solving puzzles, taking on the infected, and getting keys to progress forward to escape the mansion. Once at the labs, the characters find out that Wesker betrayed them, and he beseeches the show the mighty tyrant. Wesker gets impaled on purpose.
No, Barry! You viral cultured freak!
He details this in the Wesker report, one saying, "I injected the virus I obtained from Birkin in advance. If I made Umbrella believe I was dead, it made it far more convenient to sell myself to the opposing organization. According to Birkin, the virus had profound effects. It would put my body in a state of temporary death. It would then bring me back to life with superhuman powers. Therefore, I unleashed an awesome tyrant from its slumber and let it attack me." You can even see Wesker inject the virus from Birkin in the Umbrella Chronicles retelling, which is a great touch. That virus, along with his DNA, allowed him to come back alive with enhanced abilities. Goddamn though, Wesker has balls to let the tyrant do that. In the report, he details how it was all planned for Stars to go into the mansion, so that Umbrella could get combat data from the team taking on the experiments. With the tyrant taking out Wesker, it then goes after you. Dealing with it the first time, it's very easy to avoid and bring down like the original. You will then face it again on the roof. I will say the tyrant is a lot easier to kill in the remake than the original. In the original, it was so fast and relentless. You felt on edge the whole time waiting for the rocket launcher to show up. But in the remake, the tyrant is so slow and it ends up just being a bit underwhelming overall. If you played the original game, the story will be no surprise in general. It pretty much plays out the same. But the stuff added like Lisa Trevor and the notes that reference and add lore for future games like RE2 and 3 are really good and great additions to RE1. Now the story doesn't stop there. We have Rebirth from Umbrella Chronicles, which will show how Wesker escaped from the mansion after being impaled. We will see the first reveal of the Red Queen.
Wesker, Albert, I am afraid that as of 2400 hours, I have taken it upon my authority to revoke your access privileges to the mainframe system.
Impossible. Who are you?
I am Red Queen. My primary objective is the management and protection of Umbrella assets. My secondary mission objective
You will regret
is the
this, my
protection
lady.
of Umbrella
That
officer
I
lives.
promise.
A state-of-the-art supercomputer developed by the Umbrella Corporation, which is a bit of a play off the first Anderson movie, so yeah. We see Wesker try and get used to his new powers, which is a cool touch, and he'll fight Lisa, finishing off in the main hall with a chandelier. Who would have thought? A bit of a silly way to end that character with such a tragic story.
The end has come. Be a good girl and stay dead this time.
Wesker would escape in time and run through the woods before the mansion explodes. I will add, the Resident Evil Remake section of Umbrella Chronicles does add some nice touches with the story, like Wesker injecting the virus. Wesker is explored a lot more with his overall thoughts. You see both Jill and Chris together, which has always been some grey canon, knowing how the events truly go. Though it's basically Chris's campaign you were playing, but you see Jill go around with you as well. That's the story of Remake. I will say, the original did a better job of separating the two campaigns, where you felt like you were going different routes and doing different tasks. But in the remake, you were basically doing the same thing. You go the same ways most of the time, like having to get the key using the arrow piece, lockpick as Jill, and then go to the other side of the mansion, and in Chris's, you would continue where you see the first zombie. But the remake has made such great additions to the overall story, and it is taken more seriously with the voice acting and tone, which separates itself to be a fantastic package. What really makes Remake stand out though is the gameplay. Let's get into that.
Oh god, what did I do now? Wesker! Barry! Help!
Jill! You in there?
Barry? Get me out of here! The door's jammed!
Stand back!
grab my hand!
Barry!
That was a close one. A second late, you would have fit nicely into a sandwich.
Really?
The game plays out very much like the original trilogy. Fits camera angles, item management, backtracking, puzzle solving, all the traits of a survival horror game. Most of the puzzles have been changed from the original, and the characters are now equipped with defensive weapons that can be used when being grabbed by threats. Both characters have access to a dagger, which can be retrieved from the ground if you can get a decapitation. Chris will have a flash grenade that he will just stick in their mouth, and then you'll have the option to use a bullet. The explosion can even knock down other zombies. Jill has a stun gun that will knock over zombies, or will end up decapitating them if their health is low enough. Having the zombies' heads come off is always a big bonus and is pretty damn satisfying. If you do want to kill zombies and don't decapitate them, then you'll run into the biggest new threat with gameplay, the Crimson Heads. They're really fast and tough zombies you really don't want to go up against. There is a variant of the T-virus that performs a function called V-Act, which further alters the host's body. Zombies will go into dormancy when fatally wounded. During this time, it will rebuild its body tissue. They are then revived as Crimson Heads, more ferocious and agile creatures with blood-red bodies. The first time you come across one, it's just laying on the floor. It's not until you get the replacement key that the Crimson Head pops up. What a great way to introduce them. To avoid them, and you really want to, because they soak up a lot of bullets and damage you heavily, you'll have to burn any zombies that you down that haven't been decapitated. Both characters can use a lighter, though Jill will have to find hers. And you use a canteen that you can find and can fill with gasoline. You can use both items to burn bodies. Burning the bodies will stop the zombies transforming. You can fulfill your canteen at some save points, but there is a limited amount. So you got to choose the right zombies to down and burn, mainly areas you will consistently go back and forth through. If you leave a body, it'll come back after a few times of you re-entering the area, which sometimes you will just forget about a zombie you've downed and bam, you are in trouble. Crimson Heads will pop up just like the Undertaker. They are a great new threat to RE and add a new survival horror element to think about with the addition. In terms of the overall aesthetic, the game does a fantastic job keeping you feeling dread, like with my recent playthrough. I just went through all these rooms that started filling with zombies, got into the crow room to do the painting puzzle, and remembered there's a shortcut going forward that will help me avoid the horde of zombies I have recently seen. But no, Chris can't pick locks and I didn't have a key. Instant dread kicked in, knowing I had to go back through all those zombies and I haven't saved for a while. So I went back through the zombies, getting bit left and right. I got into the long corridor with the two dogs and my health was on red at this point, with no healing items. And I wasn't going to risk shooting since that would make me an easy target for the dogs. I ran through them and luckily didn't get bit. Went somewhere I knew had a herb, then bumped into forest which had a lot more health from a normal zombie, so that was intense. Finally, I was able to make it back into the save room. As soon as that music kicks in, all the stress fades away. I used the item box and saved. That is survival horror, and Resident Evil Remake keeps that kind of intensity consistently throughout. The game does a lot to ramp up tension over the original. Zombies will rattle the doors and go through from other areas, or even just burst through straight away and grab you. The Aqua Ring is a lot better in the remake. The sharks are more threatening, and you have a section where you can get trapped and have to escape before Neptune breaks in. It's great. Then afterwards you have to finish off Neptune. It all works so much better than the original, especially with Neptune. The caves are way better in the remake. You even have Lisa chase you in a couple sections, which adds a lot of tension too. There is a new mini-boss in the remake. You fight the Crimson Head Elder, the original Crimson Head. He gets locked up to avoid more infected becoming enhanced like him. Getting a bit more into the overall creatures, the dogs are tough in this game, always grabbing you and moving randomly. I always try to avoid them when I can. The spiders look fantastic in this game too, especially when you get the camera angle of the spider above your head when you enter a room. They are overall very easy to go past though. The hunters are a lot easier in this remake as well, though it's cool they can jump down from above areas. They do have the first person cutscene play out again, which is cool. And if you're lucky, you can rarely see the red hunters walking around as well. Now I mustn't forget the classic zombie. They look fantastic in this game and sound amazing too. And of course the iconic zombie turn is recreated and it's pretty damn cool. Let's get into the environments and sound. Several new areas and rooms were added to the game, including a graveyard and cabin in the woods. In addition, some areas were condensed, such as the room where the Tyrant and Wesker were in, were originally two separate rooms, but were combined in the remake. The atmosphere is super thick in this game. All the environments have been recreated to fit more of a spooky mansion vibe. Everything is mainly dark. You can see it raining outside as well as you can see the lightning beam through the windows as well. There's spiderwebs everywhere, a lot of things are abandoned, and there's plenty of zombies filling the halls, sometimes lying on the floor before getting up when you get close. You already feel very unsettled walking around, and it's fantastic. The game has such good atmosphere, and the overall soundscape does an incredible job to enhance the tension. A lot of the soundtrack is mixed from the original. It's all great though, and like I mentioned, does a great job to keep the tension up in the game. The layouts have been changed a bit throughout the game, but everything mainly feels the same anyways. They've been changed in such a way that it all feels new, but also you'll have an idea of where you are from the original. I did find the camera angles to be annoying at times though, sometimes being way too close to the character and having too many camera changes in one area, which is troublesome when you're trying to run around a zombie. But some of the camera angles are really good too. The overall graphics of the game still looks great today. All the details in the pre-rendered backgrounds still hold up, and because they had pre-rendered backgrounds, a lot of details went into the models for the game, so everything still looks pretty good today. There's plenty of changing in the environments and puzzles, like I mentioned, keeping things fresh, like having the 4 crests from the original, Sun, Moon, Wind and Star, used to unlock the door to the courtyard are still present, but instead are used to obtain the Magnum in the graveyard. Another change of the star is having to get all the masks. Stuff like that is great to separate the original to the remake. After going through the campaign a couple times, you can unlock real survival mode. In this mode, the game is set to hard difficulty, auto aim does not work, the door that usually breaks after 2 uses stays working, and the item boxes are no longer interconnected. This mode is a reference to the prototype versions of the original 1996 game. Originally, the item boxes were not intended to be interconnected with one another, but this was changed later in development due to criticism from testers. It's a cool mode for seasoned players. Now that's Resident Evil Remake. It's an incredible game and one of the best Resident Evil games. It's one of my favourites and I always enjoy my time with it. With that, thank you very much for watching. If this video served to entertain, be sure to like, share and subscribe. Next up,
Resident Evil 2 1998 on the PlayStation 1.